Hello and welcome. I'm so grateful to have each and every one of you here tonight. This is something that is near and dear to my heart, and I really have a great desire to empower you and support you in becoming the greatest version of who you are. Hello, hello. Hello, Tina. Thank you for joining us. Hello, each and every person. I am so happy and grateful to be here with you tonight. And tonight is our night on pregnancy with purpose. Now, this phrase is something that I have used for years, and I have seen it used for years, but I think tonight you're going to find that we have a brand new twist on it. So let me start out. I'm going to stop my screen sharing for just a moment. And let me start out by saying I love getting together with people, and it is something that I enjoy so much. I'm Kaleem Joy, and if this is the first time that we've met, I want to welcome you. I've been a licensed midwife for over 26 years. I am now an empowerment transformational coach, educator that specializes in pregnancy, labor and birth, breastfeeding, postpartum, and life in general, because this is part of what life grows, right? We grow great seeds of greatness within us as we grow babies and as we grow ourselves. So as we get started, let me screen share again for just a moment. There we go. And I'm also a global speaker. I did a TEDx talk this past year here in Folsom, and that was a great experience. One that I suggest you go ahead and listen to, because it does talk about babies in tummy in a brand new light. I'm also a mom, and I'm a grandmother, auntie, and all those good things that each of us get an opportunity to do with children in our lives. So let me start out with saying, begin with the end in mind, because any road will get you there if you don't know where you're going. George Harrison of the Beatles coined that in a song that he released after his passing. When we think about having children, we think, okay, I get pregnant rather by choice or by happenstance. And we think about, I'm going to have a baby. And that's our begin with the end in mind. However, how that occurs could be different than if you just choose to leave it up to chance. We will be talking more about that tonight. Hi, Tina. Thanks for coming on. Hi. So pregnancy with purpose, what does that really mean? It means change, growth, expansion, sharing, live, and loving. And we're going to dive into each of these topics as we go along. So I would ask you, what is the purpose for pregnancy? And you're welcome to open the chat and put that in if you'd like to. And when we think about the purpose for pregnancy, most people will share, well, here we go. Let's let Amanda in so she can join us. Hello, Miss Amanda. Welcome, welcome.
Hello.
Hi, so glad to have you.
Glad to be here.
I am going to encourage, unless we're talking with each other, to just put your things on mute, just so that we don't have a lot of background noise, and that'll kind of help us. When you want to talk or when we have something that we can share, then go ahead and, of course, unmute yourselves. What is the purpose of pregnancy? And so I suggested that you go into your chat and open that up and put in, what is the purpose of pregnancy to you? Because most of the time in the world, we look at this as, well, it's growing a baby, birthing a baby, and then having a baby and parenting them afterwards. And that is, by the general terms, that is what pregnancy is. But tonight, I'm going to uncover a whole lot more that may give you some food for thought And I encourage you to just experiment with it, try it on, see where it fits in your own life. Okay. So pregnancy is a journey for both the baby and the parent, and it is a transformation. I mean, when you really think about these babies in tummy, they are growing in the only world that they know right now, right? And then as they come into the next world, it is a complete transformation of their lives. What I think we look at is that there's transformation in birth, but pregnancy is a form of transformation, and it is the process that brings a parent to the point where they can give birth and expand their lives into the next life that they're going to live in the same way that the baby does. They come from one environment, expanding into the next. It's also the most rapid time of change, growth, and expansion in both the parent and the baby's lives. And I began to realize that it was so important that we support parents, moms, dads, growth during the pregnancy, because this rapidness of change, growth, and expansion is going to happen. How it happens is dependent upon the willingness and of the parent to go through that. Now, obviously, the baby's going to grow and they're going to stretch their tummy. They're going to build more blood. They're going to build breast tissue. Things go on in their brain. So, I mean, the physical side of this is going to take place. Now, how that happens, though, can be something that is more embraced. And we're going to talk a little bit about the emotional and mental sides of this as well. So the foundational seeds of greatness are planted and begun to grow in the baby. And if we really begin to embrace this, we understand that, yes, the baby is going to grow physically, but we are setting down a foundation of how they will view the world after they are born and what the world really is. It's like we're giving them a training ground in order to live afterwards. And part of that comes from their DNA, their genes, and by the influences of parents. So change is the seeds of life. And pregnancy is when the baby is becoming. They are developing. They are changing into the greatest version of who they are for the very first time. And when we really think about this, I mean, you know, a baby, we as humans, we were the same way. We came from an egg and a sperm, right? They collided, they came together, and there was DNA blueprints that were in there. And this DNA blueprints was, okay, these are the ways you're going to look like your parents, right? Grandparents, sometimes aunts and uncles, brothers and sisters. That was the blueprint of how the body would get formed. Would it have a digestive system and a nervous system and arms and legs and all the various things that lay down the foundation of the physical side? But what I find fascinating is that attached to that are definite genes that are in there that actually also begin to set seeds of their emotional and mental status. And that's why we see things genetically get passed down, if you will. So there is what's called epigenetics, and most people have heard that term, but it's really about the fact that although these genes are there, will they get turned on and expressed? And that's why I say the foundation of when a baby is growing during pregnancy, parents have the opportunity to be of influence on them. So these DNA blueprints absolutely unfold in this baby. And during the pregnancy, and the parent is also growing, changing, and expanding. And as they do, the two begin to synergistically learn and grow from each other. And so we want that growth to be something, right? I mean, emotional feelings, they come through thoughts. Now, a newborn baby doesn't have quite the same not a newborn baby, but a growing baby doesn't have quite the same cognitive development as we as fully formed humans in an adult world, because we've had experiences in our life. And as we have those experiences, we have the capability to begin thoughts, and thoughts then produce feelings. And when we have feelings such as fear, doubt, worry, or what if, okay, which is the, oh my goodness, what if this were to happen? Those come from the thoughts and also from where we've had our attention. So if we want to create in our lives while we're pregnant, whether that's with a baby or an idea or a project, if we want to create those things that are coming from love, gratitude, confidence, courage, calmness, and peace, then we go back to wherever our attention is. That's where the energy flows. And our attention then helps our thoughts to think the things that we would love. And then our feelings follow, and then our words follow, and then our actions follow, and then we have results. So when we're pregnant, this is an opportunity to begin laying down a foundation for these babies so that they have the capability to become their greatest version, because they start out as that egg and that sperm, and they are seeking every single moment, seeking to become a greater version of who they are, right? They're like, okay, what am I making next? What am I learning next? What can I do next? And we watch them even after they're born. They thrive on, what can I do, right? Oh, there's a hand. Oh, I've got feet. Oh, I can roll my body. I can crawl. I can walk. They learn to talk and run and jump, and then create and become imagination, flourishing in their imagination, and then continuing to grow. So we're setting seeds in there, and we want those seeds to be the very best we can. So on an emotional level, here we have the imagination. And if we can, just for a moment, allow ourselves to reignite the imagination that we have, because we use our imagination all the time. We used it as children abundantly to create the superheroes or the things that they wanted to be, such as doctors or firemen or astronauts. They wanted to make mud houses. They wanted to create things with their food. Oh, I know, I did that too. And we know that that imagination is something that can either build and strengthen us, or it can cause us to have doubts and worries and fears. So imagine for a moment that if you were growing a baby and you wanted your baby to grow emotionally strong, you yourself have to be committed to being aware and noticing what your thoughts are so that your emotions can follow those thoughts. And if you're feeling anxious, upset, frustrated, angry, overwhelmed, go back to what the thoughts were, because they're there. They're there, and those are the ones that you can begin to change. And I'm going to show you some ways to help do that as we go along. But imagination is connecting with your baby. And if you were to imagine, right now, I'm just going to get quiet for a few breaths and think about the emotion of love. I mean, think about this for a minute. Think about the emotion of love. And let that just flow through your body. And if you had a baby growing in your tummy, you would allow yourself to send that love all the way down through the placenta, through the baby's cord, right directly into the baby, so that the baby felt the emotion of love. And that sets a tone in that baby for the possibility of, oh, you mean this is part of life too? Okay, keep reminding me of this. Let me learn that. Same thing with gratitude. And I love when we can impart that to these babies and say, not just let you feel gratitude for you, but I'm grateful that you're growing a strong body. I'm grateful that you grew fingerprints today. I'm grateful for your movements in my body. Versus sometimes what I would hear as a midwife is, oh, this baby is hurting me. It's always hurting me. And I think, okay, let's reframe that. Is that what we want the baby to feel? Well, no, it's not, but it's a common reaction. So we reframe that into, I feel you being strong. Thank you for being strong. Help me to understand how I can support you in moving your body in a way that's comfortable for both of us, right? So that's a more empowering way to talk with a baby. Choosing kindness, having laughter and fun. Your baby can enjoy that right along with you. We are spiritual beings. We are having a human experience. And so, in having this human experience, do we live in the role of reacting to things that happen in our life? Why is this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this? They made me do this. And as a midwife, I've heard this so many times when people will say, you know, my partner won't let me, or this person in my past birth, they made me do this, or this person makes me so angry. And I think really we have the opportunity to know and understand that we have control over our thoughts and our feelings and our actions. We don't have control over other people, but we can respond to the normal things of a human experience, which is that we have situations, we have conditions, we have circumstances in a human experience. And we can either react to it or we can respond to it by saying, what good can come of this experience? What solutions am I open to? And taking ownership of my journey. When I started Natural Childbirth 101, it was, and I'll tell you more about that later, but when I started it and I was putting those classes together, it was so important to me that people understood what we did in our midwifery practice, because we told them from day one, this is your ownership for this experience, because we cannot help you eat. We cannot think for you. We cannot stretch and prepare. We cannot have what is called contractions. I call them expansions. We cannot do that for you. Therefore, you must take the ownership to create a healthy body and grow a healthy baby and birth your baby, because you also get to raise them. So I love reminding us that yes, we have human things that come up, but it's how we choose to handle them. Either we react to them or we respond to them. And remember that people who went into mathematics, they learned, and so did we all the way through school, that there were always math problems and they all had solutions. So I like to support, be a solution-minded parent. So change for the baby goes on, but change for the parent. And you can either do this change by design and embracing that design, creating it, or you can do it by default, which is default to whatever comes your way. And if you want design and embrace, then you begin with the end in mind. So you have to know what you want first, because as George Harrison said, any road will get you there if you don't know where you're going. And I have, throughout my career, we were very focused with the families in our births, but I also had the opportunity to work at a birth center. And there were times at the birth center when it was reminding families that the midwives are not going to deliver your baby. You are. And sometimes that's an awakening thought, even in a hospital setting. My doctor will take care of it. And I think the doctor can do a cesarean, but the doctor cannot labor and push and give birth to the baby. Now, there are interventions, I understand, that can support somebody else doing a lot. But let's come from the understanding that by nature, we are designed to give birth, and doing that means we have to be able to have pregnancy, which is part of change. Change, because baby is seeking to grow and change all the time. They start out and they are constantly growing and changing. But as parents, when we have our adult world that we are now bringing all of our backpack or suitcases that we've been putting all of our experiences in, some thrill us and they give us great memories and they help guide us to be greater, fuller potential people. But we also have had experiences, and some of those experiences came from the womb, after birth, throughout our growing years, throughout our young married or relationship years. And we put those in our backpack or suitcase and we carry them around with us. And what I discovered was that whoever we are, whoever a woman or a parent is that comes into pregnancy, they bring this with them. And as I have taught student midwives, I've said, make sure you are supporting and helping these families to unpack these backpacks and these suitcases with things that are not serving them anymore, because otherwise they will bring them into the birth and they don't want to deal with them at birth, and neither do you. You want a birth that goes smooth and well, powerful, strong, smooth, and well for everyone. So that means we have to be willing to unpack some of the limiting beliefs, some of the paradigms of habits, some of the life experiences that may have imprinted on us in a way that we may not even be aware of. So let's look at thermostats. As a general rule, most homes have a thermostat. And this thermostat is something that doesn't allow our homes to get too hot or too cold. They will, if the temperature goes above or beyond or below or beyond what the limit is set at of the normal range, it will kick on and either cool down or warm up based on that. That's a thermostat. Well, our nervous system has a thermostat, sort of, very much like this. And it says, I know what's normal. And that normal has been a pathway that has been fed into it by repetitive experiences in our life. And those repetitive experiences create a pathway. And if you've ever been out walking on trails, there are trails that have pathways. There are places where we think, I'm going to go off the trail and I'm going to make a new pathway over to there. So it's a new route. And over time, if enough people do it, it wears in, the grass moves away, the dirt wears down, and we have a new pathway. But it takes time, persistence, and repetition. So our nervous system has two parts, has many parts to it, but for tonight, two parts. And one of them is called the sympathetic. And the sympathetic is where we have that fight, that flight, I'm going to run, or I'm going to freeze. And it's part of our adrenaline, our fear, our anxiety that kicks in that sympathetic because it wants to protect us. Then there's the parasympathetic, which is our rest, our digest, and create a new idea. And the two are very functional in our body at the right time. What we do see is it has a thermostat of what it accepts as normal. And what normal is the status quo. In this status quo, we have a well-worn path. And that well-worn path are the habits, the way we've thought, the way we've felt, our perception of things in life, such as there are people I have met that say, oh, I'm too high risk. I could never have a vaginal birth. Or I don't know if I ever could be the parent like my mother was because she was perfect. Or we have a well-worn path that says, I guess that's just the way it is because every time I try to make a New Year's resolution to do X, Y, or Z, I do it for a while and then, it just doesn't. And this is why New Year's resolutions don't always stand the chance of keeping going. So we have to create a new path. And to do that, our nervous system has to be convinced that the new path is really what we want and that it's safe. So here's kind of how that works. And the reason I teach these to you is when we think of pregnancy with purpose, that purpose is for you as a parent or a person who's creating an idea and wants to parent it. You are also going to conceive an idea, gestate it, give birth to it, and parent it, regardless of what it is. That's why I say go see the TEDx talk. I talk about that. But the brain has pathways. And these pathways, before you were born, even before you were born, they were laying down a foundation of things of life. And as you grew, you began to put down new pathways in your brain of what life was and how things work. And so what I want to convey tonight is that when you're pregnant is the perfect time to begin little steps every day, a little more and a little more, to helping to grow the seeds of greatness in yourself. Because that greatness exists, but those paradigms, limiting beliefs, and those pathways of things that have come throughout your life may have laid down some that may not be serving you as well as you would love. And in understanding that, we are laying down a foundation for the children at the same time, which is why it's so important to take pregnancy and do more than just nutritionally feed yourself well, which of course is a big thing on my docket. I love that nutrition is good for the physical side. Some supplements for the physical side, good sleep, exercise, but the mental, emotional, and connecting all of them with the spirit and then the heart, which is why you're doing it, to help lay down a foundation so that the baby you carry has the very best opportunity to grow into their greatest version of who they are. Now, there's what's called neuronal glue, all right? Neuronal glue, and there's only so much glue in the body. That's why as habits are formed, and they actually see this with nerves, they attach. And when that thermostat says, oh, it's getting too hot, it fires off and it says, bring it back into normal range, which is why when you want to change something and you're going on a new path, it takes repetition to be able to create a new path. And what happens is that neuronal glue finally gets convinced by something else to detach and attach to something new and more life-giving for you. This is a just physiological physics, but this is why this happens. And I began as a midwife to start questioning, why is it that some women can go through birth this way? Why is it that some women can go through birth that way? And women ask those same questions. Why is it that I find birth so, for lack of better words, easy and smooth and just really strong sensations, but I don't experience it as pain? And then we have the counterpart of the person who just feels it excruciating and just denies it and wants to push it away and says, I must be a wimp. Well, I do think that there are some physiological reasons in the body why different people experience sensations differently. But I also began to recognize and realize that some of it was the perception of how we choose to live and how we choose to experience expansion. Now, consciousness and subconsciousness. On the conscious level, we have that ability to say, oh, this would be great. There's a great intention, a resolution to it. But on the subconscious level, it's saying, why am I doing that? For example, I was asked to go bungee jumping by my mentor, who I respected, I trusted, and absolutely knew that she would not do anything that would cause there to be an issue. But I was definitely a fearful person back then. This was back in my early 20s. And we did go bungee jumping. She jumped off and she came up with, let's say, some injuries. And I thought to myself, what am I going to do with this? If that happens to her, what would happen to me? And I suited all up because I said, yep, I'll do it. I'll do it. I'll do it. And there was no way I was going to let go of the bars. I was not going to allow myself to jump and get hurt. Now, one might say, well, that was smart. But on the other side of that, it really was about, I was saying yes, but the way I was feeling was, no way am I doing this. So what grows those seeds of greatness into more expanded version of you? It takes designing what you would love. And that's the very first question. You have to ask yourself, what would I love? This comes from my latter years mentor, not my one that took me bungee jumping. My latter years from Mary Morrissey. And she asks us, what would you love? That's the first question you have to ask yourself. Not, can I do it? Can I afford it? Is it even possible? The first thing you ask yourself is, what would I love? And I think that during pregnancy, going into birth, breastfeeding, parenting, if we don't know which way we're going that we really would love to have, then we can't possibly put our attention, our thoughts, our emotions, and our actions to get the results we would love. Because if a parent is saying, well, I would really love to have a natural birth or even a medicated birth, but my biggest fear is that I'll have a cesarean. I'm like, okay, I can honor that fear, but if that's all they think about and talk about, I'm just worried I'm going to have a cesarean. Yes, I know, I trust that I can give birth, but I'm just really worried about I'm going to have a cesarean. That's the focus. That's the focus that the nervous system, because the nervous system does not make those determinations except to keep you where that thermostat says you're safe. So the first thing you have to ask yourself is, what would I love? And then you answer why. So let's say you want to have a smooth, progressive pregnancy where you and the baby are healthy, and you describe what that's like and how you feel, what it looks like, how you experience it, and the birth and afterwards, and you describe it in as much not details of it has to be at 9 o'clock at night and etc., but you describe how you would feel, how you would experience it, and what you see and what's around you. When you can describe something like that by using your imagination, and then say to yourself, why would I love this? Well, because it would do this for my baby, because I would feel this, because this is how it would help the people around me, because this is what would be my memory for later. In other words, there's the grounding cord, and there's the power behind it that says, this is why I want that. Not just because it's a good imagination, but because this is why I want that. Then you go about noticing. And this doesn't happen the minute you sit down with that. You might go, what would get in the way of me having this kind of experience for pregnancy, or this kind of experience for birth or breastfeeding? Because some parents have a great pregnancy, happy birth, and then breastfeeding is really hard, or parenting is really hard. And then noticing and saying, okay, let me notice about what's going on here. And what is it that I'm feeling? Oh, well, I'm feeling scared or worried, or I don't feel like I'm worth it, or I don't think I have what it takes, or, all the things that we have a tendency in the mind chatter to tell ourselves. Those are the way that the thermostat brings you back to within what it thinks as the safe zone. And remember, in order to help it understand that there's a new safe zone, we have to use repetition to do that, to repattern it. So paradigms, limiting beliefs, thermostats, it shows up and it reminds us so that we stay in that thermostat by discouraging. We have discouraging thoughts. Oh, maybe I'm not really capable of this, or maybe this really isn't going to work, or frustrations. I just don't understand why it has to be this way, right? Or dissuading us. Maybe next time I'll do this. Or the procrastination. It is going to be next time. And the great fear of the what if. What if something terrible happens? I'm not worthy, or they won't let me. And that one's common. That one is still looking at things outside of us for whether we have permission. All right, I'm going to stop screen sharing for a moment. And I just want to ask, does anybody have any questions right at the moment that they want to ask me before we go on? Any? Let me read what you put in the chat. I would love that. Growing families. Thank you, Tina. Appreciate that. All right. So let's see my other notes here. When we look at this thermostat and these the ways that the thermostat likes to get our attention, we want to know that change is inevitable in pregnancy. It's not a maybe. It is a definite. But how we choose to go through it is up to us. It's up to the person growing the baby as to how they will go through pregnancy. Have I heard people say, I just detest pregnancy. I love birth and I love being a parent. And I think, okay, that's one way to view it. What if you were able to view it from a different point of view, so that pregnancy became a time that helped you develop and grow into the greatest version of who you are, because it's going to bring up things. And we would often say, like, if somebody said, oh, I've got this backache, and I say, well, pregnancy is going to bring up your weak links, or gestational diabetes. Pregnancy is going to bring up a weak link. And so this is the good news. I share with them, this isn't about a diagnosis that you now claim and have to say, oh, I'm high risk, or I'm diabetic, or whatever. It's saying, oh, there's now something that is showing me that I can improve how I go through this pregnancy. And I love that. It doesn't define you. It helps give you something good to grow on. So in order to change some of these paradigms, the thermostat and the limiting beliefs during pregnancy, the first thing you have to know is, what do you want, right? Begin with the end in mind. And having that is what is the beginning of things. So I encourage you, if you are willing, just even for a moment, to say to yourself, what would I love if I was pregnant, if I was going to give birth, if I was breastfeeding or postpartum or parenting? Pick one of those, because you can't possibly do all of them at once. Pick one area, whatever it is, just pick one area and take for about 60 seconds. If you've got some paper, journal it down and say, really give yourself permission. And this is really inside, having to help the paradigm not go, hey, wait a minute, you're going into something that's going to get you discouraged, or it's going to put you, because women who have had a birth that didn't sit with them well, and they say, well, I want this, that discouragement or what didn't sit with them is going to follow along with them unless we unpack it from the backpack and the suitcase. Now, I'm not suggesting that we change at the level of fact what happened at all. It's really about saying thank you and coming from gratitude and taking what you can learn from it to help support creating a new story. So I'm gonna get quiet for a moment, and just for about 60 seconds or so, write down What would I love in just one of those areas? And let yourself have permission to use your imagination and say, this is the safe zone right now. So go ahead. Okay. So now that you hopefully have just jotted down something, ask yourself why. Why would I love this? And let yourself just have a few words or a sentence that you add to that. Why would I love this? Okay, so now you have just a very simplistic Cliff Notes reader's vision version of what you would love, why you would want this. And third is notice, is there anything within your mind, your heart, something within your being that says, I don't know if I could have that, or that'll never happen, or this is what could get in the way. And that's the next question is, what could get in the way of you achieving this? So just jot that down. If it's a person, if it's an event, if it's whatever the circumstance, situation, or condition would be, what would get in the way? So now you have an awareness of just a little bit of what that repatterning needs to do, because those paradigms are there to really want to bring you back to the status quo. Okay. Now, this thermostat also has another name of what's called upper limits. That comes from Gay Hendricks, who wrote a book called The Big Leap. And he talks about the thermostat and about when we go through life, we get to an upper limit. And those upper limits in a relationship, let's say, when you're in a relationship and you're growing it and it's doing well, and then all of a sudden you have an argument. That's the upper limit. It says, you know what, we were getting too happy. Let's bring ourselves back down. So it's an awareness that goes throughout our lives. And it's really helpful when we understand that. We pause, we go, what's going on right now? Oh, we were just getting a little too happy. Or everything was going too well in my pregnancy. And then I needed this to get in its way to make me realize that I really couldn't have what I want. And those are things to be worked with. So here's how you work with them. Okay. Um, sorry. When we work with them, it's a simple process. Okay. And the very first thing is that you notice. You have to notice when there's a limiting belief happening. when there is a thermostat that's getting kicked off and not allowing you to grow. The first thing is just to notice what's going on here. Why is this causing me some overwhelm or frustration or anger or upset or confusion, or I'm just not seeming to get to it? What's causing? Let me notice this. All right, there must be an upper limit that's going on here, or my thermostat isn't letting me grow. So the very first thing is to notice it, and then you pause. You pause and you breathe. The breathing is when I talked about that sympathetic nervous system, which is fight, flight, or freeze. That's what goes off. And it doesn't have to go off in a way that makes you get all anxious or upset. It goes off very cunningly. It says, you're trying to grow. You're trying to forge on a new path. Okay, so that's not okay with me. That's when that sympathetic nervous system gets triggered. And so what we do is we notice it, we pause, and then we breathe. But the breathing is very specific, very simple. You breathe in through your nose. Try this with me. You breathe out like you're blowing out a straw. And we do it again. And we do it 3-4 times. And the reason that you do this is that it interrupts that paradigm or that limiting belief that is trying to pull you back down. You interrupt it. So you put something into the neutral zone and you bring your nervous system back down to rest, digest, and create. And then you think about what you really loved to create, which would have been something you have written down, your vision or your dream or your goal. You think about that and you really feel it inside here like, oh, I would just love that. And then what you do, and this is the important part, is you say, what action step could I take in the next 5 minutes or in the next day or in the next 2 or 3 days? You don't put it off, because there's always something that you can do that would help you achieve that. Because what that does is that begins the steps on that new path. It begins to convince the neuronal glue, but just once doesn't do it. This is a rinse and repeat cycling. The next and very last part is you create an affirmation, not every time you go through this, but you create an affirmation that's always in the positive, such as, I am so happy and grateful now that I have a pregnancy where I feel energetic, I sleep well, I feel my baby move, whatever it is. I have a birth that goes forward and progressive in a way that I feel nurtured and supported. Whatever it is, you put that affirmation in at that time, because the affirmations and the action steps is what begins the paving of that new trail. And the more you do it, because it's a repetition, the more you do it, the more it gets carved in, the quicker that neuronal glue is going to break away from the old path and realize that the old path is no longer the safe path, but this new path is where the safety is. Does that mean you have a new upper limit? Yeah, it does. But that's because we are ever evolving and ever growing into a greater version of who we are every day by the experiences we go through. But these are tools that you can use. And as you use them, guess what? The baby is on an intuitive level. They're learning this too. They're learning about how life is, because they're getting chemical washings going over their body when you do this. And you know what else happens? You practice it enough during pregnancy, which means you grow into a greater version, which means you carry that into the birth. And the birth is about expanding. I know contractions is what everybody talks about, because it's technically what happens in the uterus. The muscle shortens or contracts. But what's really going on is an expansion of who you are and your life, right? It's who the baby is and their life. They're coming from one world, and you are too. And going through birth is that transformation of becoming a new person. And so is the baby. And so are you together, because the pregnancy now is finished and the new life begins. And then there's a new adjustment and navigation of life. But you've been practicing these things. So guess what happens in the birth? You utilize them because they're part of what your system knows how to do. And when you meet those points, when you come up to birth and say, hey, I don't know if I can do this anymore, you breathe, you reset, you remind yourself, I am doing this and I am going forward. And I am welcoming my baby. And I pour love into my body and into my baby, because that's what's expanding you. And as you do expand that, you expand into a brand new life. And that new life now has those tools too. And then you teach them to your children. And your children learn them from the time that they are infants, because they watch you and you're able to talk to them about it. And you come from a lot of compassion and love, because they're learning to be a human too. And you know what? They have circumstances, situations, and conditions as well. But the more you practice it, the more you have that ability to help support them. So we notice, we pause, we breathe, then we imagine what it is that we really would love to have. We use our affirmations, we create an action step, and we keep going forward. And I love this, that my mentor reminds us that baby steps, as Mary Morrissey will say, baby steps will lead you all the way to the top of Mount Everest if you just keep taking a step. And that's all it is. You can't tackle anything in a day, because frankly, life has not been made in a day. And the rest of your life is not made in a day. But where and who you are in the present moment is, can I bring my best to this moment? And when you do, it all unfolds beautifully. So I want to just let you know that people, I know there's not very many of us on here, but this will go out to a recording to the people that did register. Is there are ways to continue working with me if that is something that resonates with you. And I always say that's a fee-no invitation. Feel invited, not obligated. But I have Natural Childbirth 101 classes. I'm just going to pop on my screen share here for just a second. And then I'd love to listen to, what you got out of this and what your questions are. Let me just share this so it's on the recording. So I have Natural Childbirth 101. I have my Bundle of Joy complete program, which is all videos for pregnancy, labor and birth, breastfeeding, and postpartum. And really what it is having an educational specialist that is a midwife on your team, regardless of whether you have a midwife, a physician, a CNM, or you're birthing at home, birth center, hospital, or wherever, even in a campground. And yes, I've done babies in campgrounds before, purposefully, by the way. So the QR codes are there. There is a 20% off. There's a VBAC class for people who are planning that. And I do think that they are very brave and confident as they are going forward. There's also midwife. I do consultations so that you can ask for a 90-minute time with me to help create a plan for your pregnancy, understand what that, you design one, we'll map it out, give you the very best in nutrition, supplements, mindset that I can give you in 90 minutes. And then you have the option to do more of those if you chose to. A masterclass that will meet weekly during a pregnancy. And once you deliver, you'll go into the postpartum class. And this is a time to expand on the learning from Natural Childbirth 101 and growing the seeds of greatness in repatterning those self-limiting beliefs and paradigms and growing into the greatest version of who you are in your relationships, in your health, in all aspects of your life, physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. It's a 1 hour class. There's about 36 weeks in that pregnancy and with postpartum. You'll have the video classes. I do a Q&A monthly to help answer more questions. And these are not just about the program. These are questions about anything that's going on in pregnancy, because I'm a midwife. I can answer those questions for you. And you can certainly, and you can call me and we would schedule a time to set this up to see if this is the right program for you based on what it is that your goals are. And then you have an option to do private coaching with me one-on-one, where we would meet twice a month on a 1 hour call, and you would have the video series or the VBAC, depending on what those needs were for you. Also the Q&A monthly, email support, and it's really working one-on-one with me rather than in a group setting. And then the other alternative to that is that we would, it's an a la carte, if you will. You can set up as desired to have calls with me throughout the pregnancy or birth. I have a family who's having a set of twins, and she said, can I set up some times to just talk and make sure that we're on the right track? And I'm like, absolutely. Let me see how I can support you in creating the very best circumstances and you know, what you would love in this pregnancy with having twins, and setting up your care providers, your support team before and after, making sure that your body, mind, and spirit are on track. And I was, you know, more than happy to do that. Let me stop sharing. So thank you for being here tonight. It was a joy and a delight to have you, and thank you for registering. Thank you for showing up. I really want to say to you, thank you for showing up and for investing this time in yourself. And I hope that some things that I shared gave you food for thought, gave you, you know, ideas of things that maybe you can share with other families and with yourself, whether you're growing a baby or you're growing ideas. But I would love to hear from you if you have some things that you would love to share or questions that you have. You're welcome to unmute and yeah, whatever you'd like to do.
Hey there.
Thank you.
I am super grateful that, you know, I had the time. One, Dad's home, so he has cash, and that's really nice to just be here. But a reminder to think about what could be, and like what we're yearning for, I guess, and not always have that fear. You know, I always have that fear of infertility round 2, and I sit in that a lot. So just a reminder to think about the positive and what we want. And yeah, it's just a good reminder to always think about that instead of the opposite end.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, some of that, Amanda, is supporting yourself, you know, saying, I love Amanda, and I'm grateful for her, and I'm grateful that she's noticing that, and I'm grateful to create my affirmations. And when I notice myself, how do I bring myself back on course?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Is to stop, pause, breathe, remind myself of what my dream and my goal is, and what's my affirmation, and what action step can I take. And these action steps can be everything from just take a moment and say, I love you, baby, wherever you are. You know, it can be that simple.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be something, you know, grandiose.
Yeah.
Thanks for sharing. Appreciate it. Tina, how about you?
Well, I think because I'm a birth doula, I see a lot of that fear that the what ifs,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I'm really so uncomfortable, you know, and I think again it is a great idea to try to turn that into a positive feeling instead of a negative feeling. You know, oh, this baby is moving all night long. Well, be grateful, right? So how to come across without negating what they're feeling, but to give them another way of looking at this negative feelings that they're having. And I think just being able to bring that into a visit and saying, understanding that, yes, I hear what you're saying. Maybe what we could do is work on how we can phrase those feelings in a positive way.
Mhm.
And having the affirmations, I think, is truly beneficial. So,
Yeah, well, great job for noticing that and understanding that you have this amazing gift of being a doula and supporting a woman in whatever way that you do prenatally. Every doula is a little different in how many visits they do. And I think that when we can open our understanding to embrace what can I do to support and help this particular family in saying, what is it that you would love, right? What would you
mhm,
love to create? What could get in the way? And
right.
why do you want this, right? And then helping walk them through that. And what could we do to create an affirmation that might support you, that when you feel like you're drifting off course from what you want, this can help bring you back.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, as you know, birth is it's so much a mental um, process that if we could draw out the negativity, um, I think people would have a more satisfying experience. So I think that that kind of is what my goal is now. I used to do like, okay, we're going to do our two prenatals and we're going to talk about, what your hopes and dreams are, and then we're going to do hands-on stuff. But I've realized that I need to do more than that. I need to communicate um, every other week with how are you doing? Is there anything you need assistance with? Sending an affirmation, just being more involved in the pre-labor part of it to try and bring some ease to some of the fears that might come up during labor. So I think that that has been really helpful.
One of the things that my mentor does with us that I carried into, once I learned it, into my prenatal work, was to say to a family, because when I worked at the birth center, I often went in to do prenatals on families that I had never met before. So they had taken my classes, so they knew me, but I didn't know them. And
Hmm.
I would start out the prenatal. I would come in, and they would come in, and I would say, so here's how I like to start my prenatals. What is it that you are proud and grateful for? And they weren't expecting that at all, right? I mean, when do you go into a care provider who wants to know that, right?
Right.
So I would say, what are you proud and grateful for? And they would embrace this, especially if there were two partners there. And most of the time it was like, oh, I'm grateful for my partner. I'm like, okay, so we're doing brownie points right now.
Hmm.
But when they would do it at every visit, they began to look forward to that. And I would explain to them that there's so much in life that causes us to, have the mind chatter of what am I not doing well? Let's begin to start our day with what am I proud of? And I would say to them, I'm not talking about egotistical boasting. I'm
Hmm.
talking about what am I proud of? Oh, I'm proud that I got up and I took a walk yesterday, or I'm proud that I've eaten more protein, or I'm proud of, that I whatever that is. And I'm grateful for whatever that is, because it begins to set that energy in motion. So
Hmm.
may give you some ideas, my
Yeah.
one of my goals is to create an expanded model of prenatal care that includes some of this in the time that we do it, and having a family take time before they even come to a visit with, some good outlines. What would you love in this birth, right? Which you go through. What do you want? What do you, how can I best support you? Tell me what you were looking for, right?
Right.
But when they can really come down to what would get in the way of this? Well, I guess if I was afraid that I couldn't achieve it. Bingo,
Yeah.
we found one now, right? So I just, I'm so grateful for your willingness to say, wow, there are ways that I mean, to shoot them off an affirmation, right? I think it's so lovely to be able to do something like that. How long have you been a doula?
Oh, 15 years.
Nice. Wonderful. Yeah, that's awesome. What else can I share with you? Anything else tonight that you'd like to share?
No, but thank you for doing this.
You're
It's
more
a
than
great
welcome.
reminder for me
Mhm.
to
Good. Yeah.
do some different things too.
Cool. So I want to just say again how thankful I am that you came tonight, that you took the time to invest in yourself, into what your life and your family is. And thank you for supporting me by having you here tonight. And I'm so grateful that I could give and to share.
Thank
So
you.
expect there'll be a little email just as a follow-up for tonight. Hi. Let me